Naval Ravikant.
Naval Ravikant.
Founder of AngelList.
Delhi-born Naval Ravikant.
To be honest, I feel like I just said the same things I was saying. They're kind of obvious, and maybe don't be so easily influenced. How much do we really figure out ourselves, right? There's what are the different kinds of knowledge? It's worth thinking through, right? I'm just thinking it through with you. So there's knowledge from direct experience. There's knowledge that you pick up from other sources. You're just a vessel that's passing through you, picked it up. There's knowledge that you create, which is rare. I don't know if I said anything original. I think if I were to look back, I would say that the only true knowledge I have is the knowledge that is directly verified by me. I view myself as a very basic thinker, but what I like to do is everything that comes my way, I like to deeply understand it as simply as possible. I have to be able to put it in simple words, in simple concepts, and I have to be able to do it almost visually in my mind, and experientially I have to map it to some experience that I have, and then I have to be able to take that and I have to be able to plug it into something else I understand. Even when I speak, I'm not the fastest speaker, I'm not the slowest speaker. So I think for me, it's just about, there's a great motto of the Royal Society is nullius in verba, take no one's word for it. So I think we are encouraged these days to take in knowledge, pour it into our heads like a bucket, and we regurgitate it, and we use fancy words to cover up what we don't mean and what we don't know. At its core fundamental level, I don't understand it. And then beyond that level, I get bored, I don't care to. Just being able to be very particular about what you take in, make sure you truly understand it and that it is true. Truth is the most important thing, because if you're going ahead with falsehoods because they're convenient, you're just going to walk around bumping your head against reality. And it's important to just always look for the truth, figure it out for yourself, make sure it fits into your understanding, be open to revising it because you're always wrong. It's just a question of how wrong you are. And then using that to find the commonalities in life and navigate it. And I think that's why you're better off asking someone like me about very basic things than about very advanced things. Because I don't think about myself. I don't think about what's changed in my life and if my life is good or bad or if this happened or that happened. And I don't look at old photos of me, and I don't think about old trips, and I don't think about people that are gone. I don't think about the past. I just don't live in the past. I don't pray in the traditional sense, but I am very deeply, I hate the word, but it's spiritual, right? And I would define spiritual in a negative way. It just means not mental, not physical, right? All of these roads lead to the same place. The best way I would summarize my thinking on this is that I think existence itself is a miracle. Why is there something instead of nothing? Why are we here? What's the meaning of life? These are all just variants in the same question. And there is no answer to that. Does that mean there can never be an answer to that? No, not necessarily, but if you start going down that road, you'll find all kinds of contradictions. For example, with just the meaning of life. There is no overarching singular meaning of life. However, within those personal interpretations, we all have, even though we have complete freedom to choose any meaning that we want, and we can create our own meaning at any moment, there are certain common things in what we all want as well. And so that's kind of the paradox of being a human individual, where you're completely an individual, but you're also completely interlinked to everything and anything that exists. So in that sense, everything is very interconnected. On the other hand, my life and your lives are single-player games inside our heads. We interpret everything from birth to death. Your experiences are singular to you. No one will truly ever understand you or get you. And you're always searching for that unity, that connection, that going back to oneness, source, togetherness, whatever you want to call it, community. There's many words for it. In terms of, back to meaning of life, the way I think of it is that existence itself is a miracle and everything else is science. And I think that's the best of all possible worlds. So spirituality is the side that lies on who am I? What am I here for? And these are questions that are really only answerable at a personal level. We are already living in an age of miracles that the best part is we can control. The wizardry that we create is through technology, and that's all manipulable through laws and rules and systems that we discover and we create. And that is incredible. We're all magicians. I couldn't ask for a better system. We live in the best of all possible worlds. First of all, I don't think of myself. Self-obsession is the root of all unhappiness. Or the self, what does that mean? It means that he saw through the illusion of the separate self. What does that? Did Buddha think about himself? Not for an instant. Anyone that you think of as an enlightened being does not think about themselves for an instant. The happiest people in life, when people are at their best, is because they love something more than they love themselves. They love their children, they love God, they love their mission, what have you. And all misery comes from rumination, from sitting around, being depressed, going in circles in your own head about me, me, me. Me is a disease. But the more you self-obsess, the less happy you're going to be. I guarantee you that. And I get interested in topics and concepts and ideas and understandings. And the more that I sort of focus that way, the less I just end up thinking about myself. So even people ask me oh, how's your day going? I'm like, I have no idea. Joe Rogan is incredibly successful because he was doing podcasting before his podcasting. He was the top guy on Ustream, which was just like a streaming thing on the internet before podcasting came along. Luck is one of those things that you shouldn't believe in, even if it's true, because believing it will hurt your agency. Just like victim mentality. You have no power as a victim. You have no power if things are up to luck. Whatever power you have in life comes from believing that you can change things and do things. And even if you can't change the outside, you can at least change the inside. No one controls your mind but you. Even if my parents had not immigrated to the US, I would have probably done so at a later age because I was ambitious and I wanted to be around smart people and I wanted to build things. When I immigrated to the US, I was not in any position to go to Silicon Valley and build things. But at any given time in the world's history, there's usually only one or two places that really matter in terms of moving the world forward. So there was a time when it was Athens in ancient Greece. There's a time when it was Florence in Italy. There's a time when it was London in the United Kingdom. And the time when I was kind of coming into my formative years, it was Silicon Valley. First time I used an Apple computer, it was an old Macintosh in the computer room in my high school. I just fell in love with it, and I just knew that I had to get closer to Apple. That was the thing that pulled me in. At some point, if you have high agency, if you're a person that's self-motivated, which I think almost everybody watching this is, you will end up where you're meant to go. It's just going to take some effort. The universe drops plenty of opportunity around you, but it's not necessarily on your head. It's better to just kind of take responsibility, both externally and internally. Externally for what you managed to do, and internally for how you feel about it. Like one of my little tweets to myself, and all the good ones are to myself, was I and I alone am responsible for everything I think and feel. So for example, if I get mad at somebody about something, it's my fault. Why am I mad? Why am I making myself angry? Why can't I just deal with the same situation in a cool, calm, and collected way? Why do I have to or not even show, why do I have to lose control? Because anger is a loss of self-control. Why am I still so broken inside that happens? So when I was young, my dad wasn't around much. And he was gone. He immigrated to the U.S. before the rest of us did, and it took 4 years for he could pull us there. And then my parents went through divorce and so on. So one good thing was I never had anybody telling me what to do, ever. And I had to figure everything out for myself. And I think that helps a lot. It makes you very high agency. I also, nobody in like my aunts and my mom, they loved us to death, but there was nobody saying, this is right, that's wrong, do it this way, don't do it that way. So you figure it out for yourself. And it started with reading, but eventually it just goes to thinking. But I don't think there's anything special. I think deep down, everybody wants to learn. Everyone's curious. All children are curious. Any young child, they'll be asking questions all day long. And I think the trick is just don't stop asking questions, and keep asking questions until you can answer something to your own satisfaction. Maybe I had the luxury of the time to read. That's helpful because it helps answer questions when you're young. For decades, I did not feel like I was that smart, because what would happen is I would talk to somebody and they'd say, well, there's this and that, and there's this, and they would just start using big terms and big words and defining huge things and a lot of big words. It's the mark of a charlatan to explain simple things in a complex way. And it's a mark of a genius like Richard Feynman to explain complicated things in simple ways. The smartest people actually understand what they're talking about, so they can explain it in plain English. But it's very easy to trick people. So if you're in politics, if you're in law, if you're in journalism, if you're in media, if you're just BSing with your friends, it's very easy to trick people. So I think I was fortunate enough to be scientifically. I also grew up in a tough environment, so it was a no BS environment. You had to be correct. So when you're trying to survive, you have to be correct. What is love? Okay. There's romantic love, which we're all familiar with. That's an attachment thing. It's like, I love you, if you love me, let's go have kids together. Yes, it's a biological programming. It's there, it's important, it's good to have. That's not the real love. Love is a feeling of unity. It's the attraction to yourself, actually. So you can have a spiritual love, which is a love for oneness or God. You can have a love for your children because they're just part of you. You can have a love for your community because it's like you can have love for your ideas. So love is attraction in that sense. It's a positive attraction where you see the unity in the thing with you and you don't necessarily want anything out of it. That's a genuine love. The nice thing about love is, if you think back in your life to when you were loved a lot, right? Like you were loved by your parents, great. Wonderful to be loved by your parents. At some point you took it for granted. Let's be honest. We all take our parents for granted. You really only start valuing your parents when you have your own children. And then you realize what a one-way relationship, that love relationship. When you're in love with an idea, how you just work on it passionately. When you're in love with, let's say, God or spirituality, how you're just taken and you're swept away. Or when you're even in love with a person, you can be in love anytime you want. And how do you be in love? Generally, the less you are thinking about yourself, going back to what I was saying earlier, the more you're going to be able to love other people and other things. Love is not a requirement for being a Buddha, but it is an output of being a Buddha. Because a Buddha is a person who has seen through the illusion of the separate self. Through the illusion of the separate self, they're no longer self-obsessed, and therefore their love that was earlier turned inwards and became ego, love for the self, went outwards. And it still flows. I kind of sometimes have these near-death exercises, right? Where it's just like I imagine myself dying. And it's not something that I do deliberately. It just kind of happens. The moments when you go into bed, but before you fall asleep, are really interesting because your mind goes into a really hazy, almost psychedelic state. And I used to meditate a lot. And somewhere along the way, I just found that state between sleeping and waking to be really entertaining. So next time you're falling asleep, just make just the smallest effort, because if you're making a real effort, you won't be able to sleep. But make the smallest effort just to be aware of your thoughts as you're falling asleep, as you're going to sleep. And your thoughts start going wacky, random connections in your head. And it can be really fun to watch. So I was doing it just as an entertainment thing. I'm not looking to find anything. So I think that's part of curiosity. You have to be a little careful. It's just pure, mere curiosity. It's an entertaining state. That's a fine reason. And once in a while, and I'm not trying to suggest anything, because again, if I suggest something, then it's not going to happen for you. But I'll basically feel like I'm dying. So I'm falling asleep, but I feel like I'm dying. It's like you can see things fading out. So what's happening is your mind is shutting down from waking to sleeping state. And that's kind of a death transition. You can kind of feel like you're dying. And you can literally see thoughts going offline. Your mind goes offline. And as your mind goes offline, pay attention to what remains. And don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid. You're just falling asleep. But like I said, sometimes it feels like you're dying. And don't be afraid of death, right? You just kind of go with it. It's just what's happening. And then as your mind disappears, as things disappear, as things fade out of existence, see what remains. And the self is ultimately just a thought. The self is a thought that I am a separate creature. I'm a body, I'm a mind. And if you truly were not thinking, like you're in deep meditation or you're on a psychedelic or you're a Buddha, you wouldn't have a thought of the self, and you would just be And you just be aware. That's all there is. What matters is truth, not who says what or where you live. And you can figure it out just as well as me. And you probably have. Your core experience of your awareness, same as mine. If I was wise, I'd be a Buddha. I'm not. And I wouldn't even say I'm that peaceful. My mind is a wreck. The person who's going to know the most about weight loss is the person who was fat as a kid. The person who's going to know the most about peace and happiness is the one who was most miserable inside. So don't take from anything I write to say that I'm some peaceful Zen Buddha inside. I'm not. My mind still runs out of control. I'm a crazy person. If you're doing it for positive feedback, you're eventually going to end up doing the wrong thing, right? I like burning my audience. I like occasionally I'll tweet things that I don't completely believe that are a little incendiary because I want to find all the people who get easily triggered so I can block them. I just want to blow them out. I don't care about followers. Followers are worthless. If you're doing anything for followers, your followers are worthless. Who would you have rather follow you? 10 people that you respect that are intelligent and interesting and wise, or like a million monkeys? So the follower count thing is utterly worthless. And I don't even want followers. I only want pure relationships. Every intelligent person craves is other intelligent people, right? To help things through and to kind of bond with. There was a great line that I read a long time ago, but it was something like, I think it was Emerson. And he said, in every genius, we see our own ordinary thoughts, but they come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. It's just the willingness to say it combined with saying it in an interesting way. I like saying things that I thought were true, that were novel to me in that moment. Obviously, anything I can think of, somebody else has probably thought of, with very few exceptions. So it was something novel to me, something that was true, and I would say it in an interesting way so that I would remember it. The great questions in life, the meaning of life, or what am I doing here, or what should I do, they all have paradoxical answers. So for example, does life have any meaning? I could say, no, life is meaningless. You arrive with nothing, you die, nothing survives you, you don't remember anything. On the other hand, I could say, actually, life has infinite meaning. Every moment is connected to every other moment. It's the only thing that actually exists. You can ascribe complete and utter meaning to it, right? Another question you can ask is, am I alone? And yeah, of course, you're completely alone. No one else knows your thoughts. You're a single point of awareness. Nobody else can have that same point of awareness, and any two points are infinitely different in space. On the other hand, you could say, no, of course, you're not alone. The entire universe had to conspire to bring you here at this moment. It's all part of collisions from the Big Bang till now, and then poof, here you are. So you're not alone. You're part of everything. You're an indispensable part of everything. So all of these great questions are paradoxical answers. And that's one of the ways that you're dealing with one of the great questions. And it turns out, if you think it through, the reason, when you see these paradoxes, often what you'll find is that the question is being asked. One level is a level of the individual separate self. Or like, am I alone? If you answer that at the individual level, then the answer is yes. If you answer at the universal level, the answer is no. So the paradoxical answers come from, do you choose to adopt the viewpoint of yourself as a separate person, or do you take the viewpoint of your spiritual self? And we jump between those contradictions very loosely. We end up with these paradoxical answers, and we think the question is not solvable. But that's not entirely true. It is solvable. It's just, which level are you speaking from? Borges had a great saying that in every human there is a sense that something infinite has been lost. Hinduism gets closer than anybody else, but any ism isn't going to quite get you there. What I like about Hinduism is that it lets kind of everybody find their own way. I'm a fan of, obviously everyone says Bhagavad Gita, but I like the Ashtavakra Gita, if you've read that one. Ashtavakra Gita is amazing. Vasistha's Yoga, which has a lot of the Enlightenment stories. Hermann Hesse wrote that book Siddhartha, which is kind of a fictionalized Buddha story. Then I've read, Raja Yoga and Autobiography of Yogi and all that. The conclusion I kind of came to is that you got to figure it out yourself. All that stuff is inspirational. I think we all want to know the truth. And there's little truths, and there's big truths, and there's bigger truths. And this is probably the biggest truth. Your faith in a group identity, you're sort of bound for disappointment. I mean, how many Indians are there? It's over 1 billion, right? So there's going to be as many points of differentiation as there are commonalities. So at least I approach it more from an individual level. I'm happy to be Indian. I have no objections with it. I think it's a rich culture. And I think it's, helped me a lot. And half the books I read these days were written by Indians, back in the day. Almost all the philosophy I read is Eastern philosophy. And the little bit of Western philosophy that I like, Schopenhauer and Emerson, were incredibly, and de Mello, they were incredibly influenced by Eastern philosophy. I think anyone who is highly truth-seeking will eventually find their way to Eastern philosophy because it has the virtue of being true, just like Western science has the advantage of being true. Okay, yes. So Western physics. So when people talk about like, oh, we're going to have indigenous math, no, 2 + 2 has to equal 4, right? Okay, we could be wrong, but I doubt it. That's our best theory right now, that 2 + 2 = 4. So I look to Western for science, technology advancement. By the way, the East is now starting to make strides there as well. But when it comes to the oldest questions, the best answers are the oldest ones. Like a lot of what we've been discussing has been around as questions since the dawn of mankind. So, and Indian civilization is one of the oldest civilizations. It's probably the oldest large civilization that explored these topics, where we have written materials and records and practitioners and so on. And there's probably more Buddhas alive on the Indian subcontinent than there are anywhere else in the world. So if you're attracted to the truth of the old questions and you want to find the old answers, you're going to head there. This is natural. One of my problems that I have with all religions is this idea that like, oh, this is the word of God and it was passed down through this book. Well, okay, what if I didn't speak that language? What if I was born at the wrong time? No, any fundamental truth that spiritual has to be accessible to every human at every time, in every place, regardless of language, culture, religion, age, gender, whatever, or even physical being. Like you could have mental retardation, you could be crippled, you could be dying. You should still be able to see and find and experience that same truth on your own. Otherwise, if it's brought to you from the outside, if it's temporal, it can be taken away from you. And so I think the best path towards truth is understanding, because when you deeply understand something, you're not going to un-understand it. It's the nature of truth that once you see it, once you learn it, you don't unlearn it, because it's true. Truth is indestructible knowledge in your mind. It can only be replaced by a better truth. It can only be replaced by, oh, okay, that truth wasn't complete. Here's another piece of the truth that I was missing. But in that sense, truth cannot be destroyed. It can only be overruled by other truths. So if you find some understanding, then that can be with you forever. Marriage is complicated. It's a negotiation between people. You have to learn how to live together. You have kids. It's not easy. It's too personal, and every marriage is so unique. And even the concept of marriage is sort of going away in a lot of Western societies. I do encourage children. I think children are amazing. You're here, I'm here, because an unbroken chain of our ancestors, from tadpoles to monkeys to now. If you are older in life and you don't have the next generation to look forward to, then you better find God fast, because I don't think like your own mind and your own life will be kind to you as you get older. Happy relationship is two happy people, and you can't be happier than your spouse. It's not happy wife, happy life. It's unhappy wife, unhappy. Both of you have to work hard to make each other happy. You have to be a good fit and a good match. But the point of getting married is to have children. So have the kids, and then worst case you have kids, which is still an amazing outcome. And best case you're happily married and you have kids. But the reality is life is very complicated. Every individual is completely unique. The combinatorics of human DNA are staggering. You'll never meet two people who are even vaguely alike. So if every person is unique, just imagine how unique every relationship. People navigate your relationship with hard and fast rules doesn't work. You can look to it for inspiration, you can look to it for principles, but each relationship has to work on its own merits. And I am a lazy person. So my rule is if the relationship has conflict, I just leave it. I don't fight with people. If somebody wants to fight with me, we get one fight and then it's over. So you have to navigate your way towards the people who love you for who you are, and you love them the way they are. Nobody needs anybody to change. The beauty of modern life is it gives us so many options, and that's not a bad thing. Options are good. It's just you have to navigate your way through the options and find out what works for you and then commit to that. The biggest problem in relationships is dishonesty, where we're trying to make the other person happy. We're trying to appear our best. And so for the first year of the relationship, you just fake it. You're just a different person. And sometimes that's just your emotions are driving you and you're in love, so you're being on your best behavior without even thinking about it. And sometimes it's a little more deliberate. But the reality is the longer you fake it, the worse it's going to be, because then you get trapped and now it's sunk cost and you don't want to walk away, and breaking that relationship is hard, and your friends and family expect you together and you can't imagine life separately, and now you're stuck. So it's just better to be brutally honest up front about who you are and your needs and your worst sides and all of that, and don't try to throw off any impressions, because eventually this person will see you at your worst and eventually you will see them at their worst. So I enjoy understanding, I enjoy learning. My own tweet to myself on this was spend your life in the company of geniuses, sages, children, and books. Right? Those are the four things that I enjoy the most. So being freed from need is the ultimate, but I'm not a Buddha. I'm not the guy who's going to suddenly renounce everything and not have a need. And renunciation doesn't work anyway. I like games. I think we all like games. And I've won a lot of games. And the reason to win the game is so you can be done with it. So you can see through it. If you just keep playing the same game over and over and over, grinding, trying to go higher and higher and higher, maybe that works for somebody. It doesn't work for me. So I like to either see through games or I like to be done with them. The point is, I would just play lots and lots of games. And at some deep, deep level, I knew they were worthless. But then one day I read a blog post. He called games a shadow career. He said, games are a shadow career. And I was like, oh, that's so good. That is so good. It's like a career that you're building that's fake. It's a shadow. It's just going to disappear. And I was like, and since that moment, I haven't been able to see games as anything other than a waste of time. So I still do play games occasionally. So once in a blue moon, mostly with my kid, I'll pick up a game, I'll play for a little bit. But now I'm thoroughly and completely aware that it is a quote unquote waste of time. So I would rather be recharged and ready for my next intellectual or physical obsession than putting myself on the grinder of I have to wake up at this time, then eat my blueberries, and then do my push-ups, and and just like live a regimented mechanical life. I want to live a very free life. I don't want a calendar. I don't want to be in a specific place at a specific time. I don't want to answer to people. I just want to be free. In all of these intellectual domains, you are only judged by your best work in posterity, which is not to say you can just shortcut to it. But most effort in life in that sense is wasted. But it's both training wheels for the winning one, plus you just never know when or where the right thing is going to emerge. So you kind of just have to keep moving. But the thing I'm not a fan of is wasting time. Save your time, save your energy. Just be happy, enjoy yourself. And be ready for the opportunity, because there's a time when opportunity comes, and if you yourself are rested and ready and you find yourself interested in it, then you have the space in your life and in your mind that you can be sucked into it. And again, without any desire for a specific outcome. So you are a desiring creature, but you just have to be careful with your desires, because they will take you away from your truth, because true reasoning is unmotivated. It's motivated purely by curiosity. Curiosity just means you want to know the truth. That's all it is. So in that sense, curiosity is the pure motivation. Every other motivation is motivated reasoning and is more likely to lead you to an incorrect answer. And then the worst thing you can do is get through motivated reasoning, get to the falsehood, and then you bake that into your identity. You identify it with yourself. You say, well, because I'm a Hindu or I'm a Christian or I believe this, or because I'm a Republican or Democrat, I believe this. And then you get locked into that. And now that is a part of your understanding. It's a shaky foundation. And then you start attaching other things to that shaky foundation. I have to believe this in this Hindu sect, otherwise I'm not a true Hindu. All that is nonsense. One of the best lines I heard on this was Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. So all the people that you admire, all the people that you look up to, they don't strongly self-identify with any movement.
All of us function at our best when we don't identify with anything outside of ourselves.
I try to figure everything out for myself. I don't listen to anybody else. No gurus, no mentors, no teachers, no holy this or that. I mean, I definitely have learned from people, for sure. Almost everything I know I've learned from other people, but I've verified it for myself. Okay, whether it's in politics, science, business, spirituality, whatever, history remembers the artists. The artists are the people who are creative and march to their own beat and do their own thing. Great software is art. Great business is art. Even starting a new country, some level is art. You're creating ex nihilo. You're creating something out of nothing, and that, to me, is like the most rewarding thing to be doing at any given time. But art can't be forced. In a sense, art is done for its own sake. It's not done for any external purpose. If you're doing it for money, it's less, you're hurting. The more internally motivated you can be, the more the thing itself is the reward, the better the work you will do. And the more fulfilling it is. So that's kind of what I aim for. So flow state is a wonderful thing. It's a very meditative state. But probably the surest way to not be in a flow state is to try to be in a flow state, right? Because it's that effort, right? So it comes much more from you find things that you like to do, and then because you like to do something, you're interested in it, you're going to get good at it, you're going to be doing it, and as you're doing it, you're climbing that ladder of mastery, and you can climb that ladder literally anything. As you get more and more into it, you're going to be more and more in flow. My problem is I switch around a lot. So I fall in love with something, I obsess over it, I learn everything I possibly can about it. Creativity is a mysterious force. This kind of separate self, the identity, the story, the character, the name, the emotional predilections towards doing certain things and not doing others, the reactions, the memories, that's the false self. Okay, we know that from Hinduism and Buddhism and Hindu mythology, and they've written it down much better than I could ever say. That's the false self. But yeah, that's the self that we function under 95% of the time. And when we go into a flow state, that self quiets down for a bit. And then all that remains is true self, which is just, I mean, if you could keep your death in front of you at all times, you would live a magical life. Value the exact moment at its, as being the complete and wholesome and only real sacred thing that exists. I guess the ideal would be, it would be good to have self-realized before that, ultimately. Enlightenment is not something you necessarily, from what I can tell, it's not something you necessarily find or create. It's more just unlearning. It's a shedding. It's what remains when everything else is gone. So it is a mini death of its own sort. It is a death of the separate self in the mind. I'm not looking for that kind of death, but I would say I'm looking for truth. And if that's true, then I'll take the truth. I'll take an unhappy truth over a lie any day. And I don't think it's an unhappy truth anyway, but it doesn't matter. I'm open to whatever the truth is. If the truth is, I'm just a brain in a vat, there's a simulation, and someone's prodding and poking at me, and they're going to torture me for eternity, fine, show me the truth. I'd rather know the truth. The West is going through a very hedonistic phase, where it's all about being single and partying and doing drugs, and those are hard things to resist. They can really destroy your sense of self-being. If you, just from an evolutionary past, if you had access to like easy weed all the time, you would have gotten eaten by something, right? You wouldn't have made it very far. It's just in modern society, yeah, we can do that. Modern society is really weird. We've changed our physical environment much faster than we're adapted for. So we do need all kinds of coping mechanisms, right? For example, we're all overfed, we're under-exercised, we're overstimulated. Our minds are worrying about faraway things, right? The media, the purpose of the media, as I've joked before, is to make every problem your problem, right? You go on social media, and it's just all dueling meme viruses, each one trying to occupy a slot in your brain to make you care. Well, 1,000 years ago, someone could have gotten shot or blown up in some faraway country. You would have never heard about it. You had no stake in it. You had no way of knowing about it. Now it's just, your brain is not designed to handle all the world's emergencies in real time as they break. It's breaking your brain at some deep level. You're not even meant to see violence or pornography. Like, those are very weird and rare and unique new things. And so the modern struggle is to navigate through the fruits of abundance that are wrecking you. Become almost a yogi in self-defense to protect yourself. It is fiction. The past is, it is a narrative. You don't remember most of it. The little bit that you do remember is very selective memory stitched into a narrative. There's no point in really remembering it. Presumably there are lessons to learn, but you probably already digested those and learned them. You don't even have to think about those. So what's the point? I think about the future for practical things.
Career stuff.
Well, like, yeah, if I have to make money or an investment, or if I have to like figure out what to do with this child and this problem and solve that, or where do I want to have dinner? So yeah, in that sense, we are future planners. But I don't think too far ahead. I want to think about the future as regards to utilitarian things. Food, money, those kinds of things, problem solving. I don't want to think about the future in sense of what does it hold for me. Like, am I going to be happy? Am I going to be in a good relationship? Am I going to die? Like, the death thing is interesting to think about. You kind of can't look away. It's like the most important thing that's going to happen to you, right? So you have to think about it. But I don't want to think about, I don't want to self-obsess. The reason I don't self-obsess anymore, or never even got that into it, is because I just found it both a waste of time, as well as it was just destroying my happiness. Happiness is a big word, so more peace. It was intruding on my peace.
Gotcha.
I don't have advice for you. be more selfish. Make sure you really enjoy your work. Make sure you really are only working with the people that you really like working with. You know, you don't want to be in grinder mode. If you're just grinding, you're gonna burn out. And the day you burn out, this thing is over. Enjoy yourself, and so that's part of it. So be selfish and make sure you enjoy yourself. You will be judged at the end of the day by your best work, not by your average. All my content that is out there that people like, I didn't do it for them. I didn't do it for anything. I didn't do it for anyone. I just did it for me, and it was deeply selfish. It was just notes to self, and there's nothing wrong with that because we're all the same inside. So if you're creating art, then you do it for its own sake. You do it because you enjoy it. And then other people will see the same thing that you saw in it. And they'll get value out of it. So I'd say just be selfish and you can sustain it. No bows, no gurus. Anybody calls me, you want to not be my friend?